Welcome to the Ethics Guild podcast. We are at Rutgers University, the Veterans Affairs Office, and thank you, Anne and Ursula. They both work here. They are leaders in this community, and we wanted to understand a little bit more what they do. But before we even do that, we would like to know how they got involved with serving veterans. So I don't know who wants to take that first leap of faith.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Ursula. I've been working with veterans since 2007, so it's been almost 20 years, I guess. My background is in social work. I grew up on the West Coast. I went to school out there, and then I started working with the foster care population, families and children, and minorities. And when I moved to the West Coast, to the East Coast, and then I started, settling down, having my family, and realizing that it's, the social work field is a very difficult and draining field to be involved in. So I had to take some time off when I had my oldest daughter, and then when I went back, I was ready to go back to work. I was living in Staten Island, and I started working. It was a part-time position at the College of Staten Island for a veterans coordinator, and I applied. They were looking for somebody with a social work background. Even though I hadn't worked with military veterans, I had worked with elderly, hospice, foster care, mostly families and children. I hadn't worked with a military population, but I did have the background. So I applied and I got the position. And this was back in 2007 when the first deployments were coming back from Iraq. The first 3-year deployments, they went out in 2004, they were coming back in 2007. So the colleges were starting to develop programs to support these individuals on our campuses. So I worked as a veterans coordinator there at the College of Staten Island, and that's kind of like how I started working with military students. And I love working in the college setting and working with the military affiliated population. And almost 20 years later, I'm still here. And along the way, I met Anne. She'll tell you a little bit about how we met and how she started working in this field.
Thank you, Ursula. And I'm kind of interested because I know you have a military background too.
I enlisted in the Army in 2001 in July, so before 9/11. I remember I enlisted in the Army Reserve initially. I went to college, like most 18-year-olds do. I was 21 at the time, though, and I could make it to a party, but couldn't make it to a class. I was not doing very well in college. And I was a bartender at a restaurant across the street from the recruiting station. So the recruiters would often come in to have lunch and do their thing. I mean, why not pitch? Well, I'm there, and I was not doing well, flunking out of college, and I thought I needed something. So my dad had enlisted in the Navy during Vietnam. My brother was serving in the Army, one of my brothers at the time. So that was it. I was like, I'll do this. I'll be a reservist. It's a weekend a month. It won't be a big deal. And I'll get a little more money for school, and it'll make me more disciplined. I'll be better when I get back. And then 2 days before I finished basic training, 9/11 happened. So, things changed dramatically about what the military was going to look like. I mean, I joined during peacetime. And I remember the drill sergeant going around. We thought they were messing with us and that it was like a war game. So we were turning in our gear at T-50. And usually it's a little bit of hazing where they'll be like, oh, it's still dirty, and they hand it back, and it's not. But they were just taking it, right? And so we knew something was happening, and they put us in regular POVs, personal vehicles, getting us back to the barracks. And they wheeled out the TV to show us what was happening, and just as like one of the buildings was dropping. And then the drill sergeant went around like, what is your job in the military? And asking people and then telling them what their job was going to be now. And I was a carpentry masonry specialist. So I just had the biggest bonus, right? And I liked working with my hands at the time. So, he got to me, he's like, you're making caskets. And then he went to the next person. It's like, a big change. So my reserve unit didn't deploy while I was in it, but in 2003, I volunteered for active duty, so I switched over. Went to Germany for a month, and then my unit was already in Iraq, so I went to Baghdad to meet them in 2003. Got back to Germany, and then less than a year later, I was back in Iraq in Mosul. And then when I got back to Germany, I was done. It was my 3-year.
Did they offer you like a big?
I don't think it was so much as some. I do remember that. I wasn't interested. I knew I wasn't going to get a career. I knew it was going to be a short time. And then trying to get me to extend just a little bit. So even though I was a carpenter, mason by training in the military, I ended up doing training NCO clerk of supply for a little bit. And when I was leaving, I was helping other people get orders to go to the next unit because my unit was getting deactivated and reactivate it in the States. And yeah, they promised a lot and offered a lot. I was like, I'm good. And I worked with, so I went to the College of Staten Island to get my master's degree because I did get out of the military in 2006. I went back to college, finished college at a different school, went to get a master's degree. And Ursula called me out of the blue because I'd applied to work in the archives because I was getting a master's in history. So I was looking to work in the library. But what you call, I guess, the HR to ask if anyone who was a veteran had applied.
We're looking at the applications of students that have applied for like college assistant positions,
Yes.
basically, at CSI. And we were trying to see if there were any that had like a military, experience or any kind of background. And Little, back then, that was her name. We came across her resume and gave her a call. And I don't know if we hired anyone else. I feel like we hired a couple students.
Yeah.
You were one of the students that we hired as like a part-time college assistant to help out in our efforts at the campus because I was a part-time position. And then, we had a couple students to work in our office. And she was one of them.
So
That's how I started working with veterans. It wasn't something I thought I would end up doing.
I don't think that it was so much of a change. We've always had a reading problem. There's always been a reading problem, right? COVID did not unveil this great big reading problem. COVID unveiled the access and accessibility, right? That woke us up. But we've always had a problem in this country with reading, going back to anti-literacy laws. So I just want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that our brains were not wired to read. We have to teach it, right? It does this great thing. It rewires itself, right, to form pathways for reading to develop. A lot of people don't understand that. It's very different than language. Language, you can put a child in a room full of people who are speaking and they will speak. You don't have to teach them how to talk, right? That is not going to happen for reading. You cannot sit someone in a room full of people who are reading, whether they're reading out loud or silently. It's not going to happen. You have to teach it to read, right? That starts very early. What we think is reading starts in kindergarten, and then we build these habits in kindergarten. And if we think that, we're 5 years already behind, right? Reading starts really at the moment of conception. How? Well, all of the stuff that mom eats, all of the environmental pressures and stress impacts the developing brain. Reading is all about the brain. The brain is the main character, right? And so if we understand that, then we have a point of reference. And so how do we build stamina, right? Because in order to learn to read and read well, you have to build stamina. I'm like, this is a race, right? Not for the quick athlete, but it's endurance. And it took us years, decades to get here. My book has only been out since August. It's not going to take months for us to get out. And so people have to come to the point where I came to and say, okay, I reflected, now I see, and now I'm going to do better. When you know better, you do better.
New York City. There's so much more beyond the walls. Let's explore.
I'm a beast. You know I'm a beast. Welcome to the feast. My whole team off the leash. We don't need to feed. Everybody eat. Hey, you know I'm a beast. You know I'm a beast. Welcome to the feast. My whole team off the leash. We don't know defeat. Everybody eat. Hey, you know I'm a beast.
Can I run up the score, run up the board, breaking the mind? Hey, in the door, you know what happened? We step on the floor. Hey, come on, you don't want partners, you already know it.
Maestro style, cosmic call,
Transform your mind. It's time to create.
I'm trying to coexist. Exist. Yeah, I'm trying to coexist. Exist. I'm trying to coexist.